Welcome to the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil
and Renee, where amazing things happen. Our goal is to help build, repair, and restore healthy relationships.
Our primary focus is on the marriage relationship. However, the topics are applicable to the relationships that we value most. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow. Woo woo! We are at episode 4 of the Rich Relationship Podcast. And they say that if you make it to 7 episodes, that you're more likely to succeed. And so that means we are more than 50% of the way, babe.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm excited. This episode is called Now and Later, or as I called it growing up, Now Laters.
But you were talking about the candy.
Yeah, if you guys notice the graphic, it has a Now Later because our topic today is regarding uniquenesses and differences in relationships.
How did you come up with now or later, though?
Because
between uniqueness and relationships.
Well, because some people are now and some people are later.
What happened to make you come up with that title, though?
Well, I used to always say that I'm now and you're later. And I was talking to my friend Zion, and we were just talking about now later. And she said, that's really good. And I thought it was good as well. So I decided to use the now later as the graphic for this topic of uniquenesses and relationships. Because it is really sweet that we're different.
Right.
So I thought it would be really cool. And raspberry was my favorite flavor now later.
So that's the trivia point for this episode.
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite.
Remember, everybody, is raspberry.
Raspberry, blue raspberry. We was growing up that they had blue. It was just regular red. But I love raspberry.
I think I was green apple or cherry.
Okay.
I go both ways.
I like cherries too. I like banana too.
Okay.
So we are really excited about this episode. So get ready, sit back, and let's get going.
On this episode of the Rich Relationships Podcast with Gil and Renee, we are actually talking about now and later, the differences in personalities in men and women.
And one of the things I would like to say starting off is that there is no such thing as good, best, or better when it comes to people. Mm-hmm. Because we are all different, and God created us that way. He created men and women different. He created women and men to be different, but even within men, a difference between men and women, there's different personalities of women, and there's different personalities of men, and there's different characters of men and different characters of women. And so I think a part of this is just acknowledging and knowing who you are and embracing that and being okay with it. What really prompted this was that we had a situation where something was going on in our family, and I just realized we're just different. We're different. God didn't create it. One of the things that I used as a reference was 1 Peter chapter 3, where it talks about cultivating beauty, and what it talked about in the woman being beautiful was her learning how to submit and learning how to not use her words but learning how to use her actions. And where for the man it's a totally different instruction. And so if you look throughout the Bible, God gives different instructions to men than he does to women, because men are more driven by respect and women are more driven by love. That's just one of the differences in men and women. Even in roles and responsibilities, there's difference. So just learning how to accept that and embrace that and know that one person may be now and another person may be later, and that's okay.
Right. I think about the personality aspect of it, even when we first started dating and when we got together, how different we were in even just personality types, and how we didn't look at it as a negative. We actually embraced it and was inquisitive about it, figuring out those differences, not so I could correct you or fix you, or you could correct me or fix me, because like we have maybe said before, you're probably going to hear again, is we all are very unique in our makeup. Our situations are not that we come across just in living life, but we are unique. And that uniqueness comes from our personalities, and those personalities are driven from, some people may say, from nurture versus nature, from the psychological
and I think
aspect
it's both.
of it. It is. Yeah. It is. And some of them may think it's just from experiences, good and bad, that kind of make up who we are. And I think that contributes to how we take and what we take into relationships, which is what we're going to be talking about a little bit. And we're going to kind of describe some of the personalities. I'm more interested in those things because I like to say, even when we first started dating, but even after we've been dating and got into our marriage, I became a student of Renee.
And I became a student of Gil.
And that means I studied you and listened to you and watched you and all those things, just like you would in a class or something else. Not that I was trying to figure you out, but I was trying to have as much success as possible
Exactly.
with the relationship with you. So therefore, I had to learn you.
And I think that's one of the things is to learn someone doesn't mean you're trying to do anything to change them. It just means you're trying to understand, because the Bible says to live with people according to the knowledge of who they are. And I think that that's very beneficial, that we begin to first understand ourselves and know who we are and how we function and our growth areas and our strengths, but then also to be able to give that grace and understanding to the person you're in a relationship with. You know, we're talking about the uniquenesses in relationships and the difference between men and women. One of the things that I can say going into this that we need to understand and embrace is that the greatest gift you can give to another human being is grace. And so in going into this, understanding the difference between men and women, I think the greatest solution to having a healthy understanding of uniquenesses is to understand that you may not agree, you may not even relate, but when you can give grace to the other person, and that's what I love about it, that it says in 1 Peter is that men are different and women are different and our personalities are different, but when we go into it with grace, understanding that there's something about this other person that I may need, versus looking at it from the perspective it's my job to change them or it's my job to try to fix them, it makes relationships healthier when you understand going in that you're going to be different. Like you're going to talk about the different personalities. Let's talk about that and kind of understand what it means and how do we actually understand ourselves better by understanding our personality types.
Right. I think when you said going into the relationship about thinking that the other person needs fixing, or that they're a project, there are going to be things in the relationship that you may see that you may not necessarily like at the onset of the relationship, but you still have to give that person grace, and where your initial goal was not going into the relationship to change them,
right,
but was to accept them.
Right.
Accept them just as they are. I remember you talking to someone in the past about a couple we had worked with, and one of the questions that you asked was, if this person never changes,
right,
are you going to be okay with that?
And the question I always ask them is that, what's the one thing about them that you don't like? And if there's not one thing about the person you're going into a relationship you don't like, you don't know them well enough yet. Because there's going to be something about everyone's personality that you don't like. And then the second question was, if that never changes, can you live with it? Mm-hmm. Because I think it's better to think that this is something I'm going to have to live with. And there's something that everybody brings to a relationship that is a shortcoming or a flaw.
Or a growth area.
But you have to go into it understanding. And that's what grace is all about. Not expecting to find a perfect person. Because my godmother, she was funny. She said relationships are like a plate of cookies. Everyone has a bite mark on the cookie. There is no perfect cookie. You just have to find the one that has enough cookie left that you can enjoy for the rest of your life. What are some of the personality traits? What are some of the personality types, so that we can kind of identify our own selves in this whole picture?
For even just looking at this, I like not only obviously the biblical aspects of things,
yes.
that's the origin of a lot of what we try to do and what we try to communicate. That's where we lay our foundation from, because that's what we are. We're believers in
right.
Christ. And prior to becoming believers, we actually had a time of where it's almost like you freestyle through life, where you just kind of try to figure it out as you go or make it up as you go along, because there's really no guidance. Even if you have parents, and that's our jobs as parents, and if you are or are not or going to be in the future, is to guide,
right,
our children and even youngsters into letting them know who they are and at least laying some type of foundation.
Right.
But if you didn't get that, you kind of go along through life wondering and trying to figure it out as you go along. It's almost like you're making it up as you go along.
Right.
And sometimes those personalities, I used to think about, why am I the way that I am? And if you come along and meet someone who tries to fix you or don't give you that grace, you'll think you're broke.
Well, we are actually all broke.
Well, I'm saying broken from the aspect of they think that there's something wrong with you that needs fixing. You know, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm this way for a reason. This is how how God designed me, if I want to say it that way. Like, as an example, introversion versus extroversion. One of the things we did early, not only in our marriage, but you can take it, there's a Myers-Briggs personality profile that's like 16 different profiles, and there's free resources out there that you can go and look at, and you can take the test and kind of at least get a baseline or at least an understanding of, well, not that it's absolute, but at least it gives you a place to start.
Right. And
that was pivotal for me. You know, some people likes to figure it out on their own, which is fine.
Right.
But for me,
it just takes longer that way.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to, well, where do I start?
Right.
And it was through a class that I took in psychology back in college that I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, it's like this nailed it. It's like, this sounds like
me.
me.
When you read those descriptions, and for me, it was very enlightening and very instrumental. Again, that was the Myers and Briggs personality assessment. It's a free resource, been out there for years and years and years. And like I said, it gives you 16 profiles, and they basically break down into 4 letters, you know, and each one of the letters gives you a kind of, I guess you can say, a overarching description, your personality type, starting out like as an example, the 2 types, either you're an E or an I, which means you're either an introvert or you're an extrovert. For me, I'm an introvert.
And I'm an extrovert.
So that's just an example, and we can talk about it, or we can go into it, or you can actually do the research on your own and get those personality types. And then the second phase of it, either you're a sensing person or you are led by intuition. And for me, I was a sensing person.
And I'm an intuition person.
Right. And then the third area, either you're a thinker or a feeler. I'm a thinker.
I'm a thinker. I think when I was younger, I was probably more, I've been a thinker my whole life.
Mm-hmm. And then the last area is you're a judging or a perceiving person. And I am a judging.
And I'm a perceiving person.
And those are just traits of the personality, and what kind of at least was a foundation for me. And when I read those things, it was like, wow. So that's why I think and do and behave the way I think and do and behave.
And I think it's so important, and you're going to hear this over and over and over and over again. We're really big on discovering your why. If you are doing anything and you don't know why, eventually you're going to try to do something different.
Right.
And so it's so important that you discover your own personal why about everything in your life, whether you're 40 or 20 or 18. Discovering your why is so crucial to you having success.
To say thank you to everybody who have been listening. We've been getting feedback, and the community is growing, and we're thankful to everyone for taking time to share some of your time with us on the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee. And we're just grateful and thankful and look forward to many more episodes coming forth. And just wanted to say, if you have any feedback or any comments or questions that you wanted to give us, you can always reach us at richrelationshipsus.com, which is the website, or you can send it to our Gmail, which is richrelationships.us@gmail.com. And we will definitely look forward to seeing those feedbacks, good or bad, as we like to say, weaknesses and growth areas, or growth areas and strengths, or however you want to describe it. We'll take it all, and we're just thankful for it.
And I'm really excited about the people who are listening to the podcast, people that you would think would not listen. I'm just grateful for all of you guys. So no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, please join us in this community, because without you, there is no us.
Right. And a lot of times it's not about what Gil and Renee has to say. we're sharing the things that we've been told and people have related to us, and even we're going to have people on talking for themselves.
Yeah, sharing their story.
Because everybody has something to say.
Yeah, something to add, something to bring to the table, because we are
stronger together.
That's right. And so that's what we want to do. We want to grow. So we just want to, this is our little time where we just say thank you. Thank you. And thank you, God, for the opportunity to have this platform. There are so many different ways you can reach people. And I just feel that this gives us an opportunity to be a ocean and not a lake, because we can pour out the things that God has put into our life, and we can help other people to grow, and it's helping us to grow. So I just love this platform. Thank you all for being a part of our community, and thank you, God, for providing us with this platform. Yes. I love podcasting.
That's great.
It's that time.
What time is that?
It's Got Wisdom, Got Questions.
So what did you get? We thank everybody who reached out via the community and sent in questions. And you have Got Wisdom, Got Questions. Go ahead, babe. Who do you have?
I have a Got Wisdom from Monica Pearson. And her Got Wisdom was shared on her Twitter and her Facebook Live. She's one of my favorite anchor people. Thank you, Monica, for letting me share this.
She's out of Atlanta, correct?
Yes, she is. She is. My goals. And so her wisdom was the difference between destructive and constructive criticism. And basically, she gave the definition of constructive criticism means that someone shows you what's wrong, they tell you what's wrong, and then they give you some things to do to correct it. And I thought that was very powerful, because destructive criticism means it tears you down, it leaves you empty, it leaves you feeling bad, and it feels you broken down. And so what we want to learn how to do is to give constructive criticism, because we want to help people get better.
Right.
We want to help people to grow. And so then our Got Question came from, thanks for everybody for participating. Please remember, we need your questions, your comments. This is a community. We want your part. So this is your part, your time to share and shine. So our Got Question came from Shauna Bonner. And her question was, are your non-negotiables a hope or an expectation?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good one.
So what did you, how would you answer that?
Well, I would say that it's neither, because your non-negotiables are a part of your standards.
So non-negotiable is really not an expectation. It's more of a standard that you have for a relationship, such as like respect.
Right, respect, their relationship with God. You know, like I think about, for me, I said I didn't want to date someone who had kids, and I didn't have kids, so I could have that standard.
Sure.
You want to make sure that if you have a list, that you are fulfilling the list, because I think it's important that you understand that you're only going to attract what you are. It's not realistic to expect someone to be out of debt, and you're not out of debt. So there are standards that we should have. We should all have a list of things that, you know, my have tos and my I won'ts and my got tos. And that's the, you know, I want to be with someone that's saved. So you have to date someone that's saved. You don't want to date someone that's unsaved and say, I want him to get saved, because that's an expectation.
Right. So the expectation comes in where you have these hopes, dreams, goals, aspirations that you are putting on someone else to fulfill, that you have. It's your list, and you're putting it on someone else to achieve or accomplish that list, which is an expectation. And just like we said in the previous episode, the expectations are your responsibility, not someone else.
So you got to listen to the other episode about hopes versus expectations to hear what we're talking about, because it's a really different mindset than what you may think it is.
Sure. So we appreciate everyone sending in Got Wisdom, Got Questions. You can always send those in to our Gmail account, which is richrelationships.us@gmail.com. And we thank you again.
You know, babe, thanks for giving that description of the different personality types. And that's one facet of who we are, our personality. But then there are some differences that are specific to men and specific to women. And then there are some differences that really have nothing to do with gender, but it has everything to do with your order of birth. We were talking about that the other day, the difference between being the firstborn versus being the baby. There are certain things that are different as a result of being optimistic, being pessimistic. When we think about us together, what would you say? I always say that although we are different, we are alike in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I don't think that opposites attract. I think that what makes you attracted to people are the things that you have in common. So when I look at our personalities different, there's a difference between having a different personality, but I think that what matters is your character, mm-hmm. having the same character. We're both loyal. We're both honest. We're both hardworking. We're both trustworthy. We're both committed. We're both people of our word. And so those are the things to me, whereas your personality is something that could grow and change. Your character is really the foundation of who you are. And I think that when we're talking about, single people, people who are dating, you need to go into relationships focusing on your character and not just focusing on the personality, because as you grow and mature, your personality could possibly change, because I am probably more introverted now than I was growing up.
Well, I think when we started out, I was obviously the introvert. We said it in the episode a few episodes ago where, like, Erin, our daughter, didn't say I talked for the first 10 years of her life. It wasn't that I didn't talk. I just didn't have much to say about what was going on. And
well, you did. I just think you chose.
And it was just being quiet, and just because I was quiet doesn't mean I didn't care or things didn't matter to me. It's just I wasn't talkative.
Right.
I was just an introverted type of person. And I think, as you said, as you get older, sometimes, especially in our relationship, it's been a transference.
Right.
Just like I have become, in latter parts of my years, I have become more talkative to other people and even strangers, which would have been like, are you
unheard of.
Are you crazy?
What do I need to talk to you for? I don't know you.
I have nothing to say, where now it's a part of the natural progression of,
and it's beautiful
of
to
maturing,
see that.
But also having a desire to not only help people, but just to engage, and it wasn't something that I set out to do and say, I'm going to become an extrovert now. That's not going to happen.
No.
I know it's still not going to happen.
Right.
I'm still an introvert, but I understand there's also some limitations to those things. While I may be very perspective and introspective and those types of things, as far as taking a real good hard look at myself, not from a selfish and conceited standpoint, but wanting to get better at a lot of things, not just in one area of my life. That's another part of being this type of, it's the ISTJ. Uh-huh. That's what I knew, that personality type, and those types, the types that we are introspective, we think a lot about things, we're very, what would people say as loners. We do well by ourselves and those types of things, but that can also be a limiting factor, where even though you may be a loner and be a singular type, I like being by myself, those types of things. You said it best in a previous conversation, where sometimes people don't get the best of you because you keep it to you.
Right.
And that can be something that God may have put somebody across your path that he
Who
wants you to get. Yeah, he wants to get something to them through you. But if I am more closed off, and because of my introversion-ness, if I can say it that way, I don't engage.
Right. Because I believe that everyone has something that they can offer that can be a blessing to someone. But I think sometimes we're so focused on getting everything perfect that we miss the opportunity to share our imperfections, because people don't really grow from our perfections. They grow because the Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. We have to share our testimony. We have to share our story. Even the things that make us feel uncomfortable and that may seem a little embarrassing to us, it's really not about that. It's really about being hot, honest, open, and transparent. Mm-hmm. And that's something that for some personalities is easier, and for other personalities it's more of a struggle.
Right.
And I think about just the difference when we say now and later. I would say if we had to use that, let's just use the now or later.
You're talking about the candy?
Yeah, the candy.
Okay.
Like, would you be a now or would you be a later?
What do you mean?
Would you be a now person, do it now? Or would you be a do it later person?
I think if I had to just pick one or the other, because
Right.
I'll think I'll say both, but I know that's not the truth. I say
Yeah,
which one do
what's the truth?
which one do I lean more towards?
Right.
I would probably say later.
Later.
I will always again, that goes back into my personality type, and it's how do I take in information?
Right.
That's a part of my personality type. We said it at the beginning. Either I'm a sensing person or I'm an intuition person. A sensing person takes in information. They like to analyze things. They like to give me time to think about this. Give me time to process this. Let me get my thoughts together. And we are very detail and plan oriented, and that can be a limp fact. It can be one of those things of paralysis by analysis where I think so much that I don't make decisions, and that can be a problem. So if I had to answer your question, I think I would be a later person, but that's why, because I'm sensing things. I have to do it, where your intuition, right. Yours is like, let's go, you think of all the possibilities. And I said this before to you in a personal conversation. I was like, how can you take all that information in, all these different variables from conversations, and it was a personal interaction, and process things and come up with a solution and then articulate it to a point where it's like, okay, that makes sense, but how did you get there?
And I think a part of it is understanding that God creates us different. And if you're trying to make a now person a later person, you're going to frustrate them. If you're trying to make a later person, vice versa, you're going to frustrate them. So I think a part of it is understanding that I'm a now person and you're a later person. Mm-hmm. And it's understanding why and seeing, because sometimes I need to be a later.
Right.
Sometimes because I am a big picture thinker. I don't always think about all the little bitty details.
Right.
And that's where, even with this podcast, I thank God for you. I thank God for what you bring to the podcast. I thank God for your outlines and your notes and your structure. Like for me, I'm the creative person. I do all the graphics and all the, but together,
it's an exchange, because
an exchange.
It's a balance of the two, because I think if we learn to embrace the uniqueness in each other's relationship versus change it.
Right.
As the old saying go, if both of us are the same, one of us is not needed. Yeah, and I definitely need you, in my life, because it helps me become better.
Right.
And that's where that exchange comes from.
And you help me become better.
Well, yeah, that's great.
And so I think a part of it is that when you think about now and later, is understanding why you're that way, but then also being open to doing things different. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about glass half full, glass half empty.
Right.
Because that's another factor.
That's a part of the decision-making process where, again, it goes back to those acronyms, that lettering that we're talking about on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee. We're talking about
now and later.
The uniquenesses in men and women, where we're talking about the personality aspects right now, and which you just mentioned, the glass half empty and glass half full. That could be that optimistic versus the pessimistic type, but also I think that plays into how you make decisions about things, where I'm a thinking person, where we're both thinking, but mm-hmm. the opposite of that is a feeling person. They just kind of go by how it feels. If it feels right, you just do it.
Right.
Well, the problem with that from a thinking person's perspective is you're going to miss something. As far as if you feel your way through a decision or something like that, that's something that you're going to miss.
Because your feelings change.
They do, and a lot of times it's situational, and it's based on how you're feeling at the present and moment, right then and there, whether it's a heated topic or a heated discussion or a laid back type of thing. You just want to feel your way through it, and that's something that a thinking person has to embrace, because there are times where you need to feel, you need to go with the flow, so to speak, because everything is not analytical.
Right.
Which is the thinking aspect of a person when it comes to decisions, where I have to think my way through it. Some things you can't think your way through it, but that's what you have to embrace from someone you're in a relationship with, that you can glean from. And even if you're not in a relationship with someone who has that feeling aspect, you can know, if you know that about yourself now, that can be very beneficial to you going into a relationship, that I like to think my way through things.
Right. And I think about, even though we're both thinkers, I would say I'm more of the glass is half full, and you're more of the glass is half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you are an optimistic person, you see the light in everything.
The sunshine in every situation.
It's wonderful. It's going to be good. It's going to be okay. Come on. I know your head is bleeding, but you know what? It's
okay. Simmer
worse.
down, happy Smurf.
I know.
I would be probably grumpy Smurf. That pessimistic.
You would be grumpy Smurf. I remember when we were younger, we went away for a weekend for our first go away. And yes, that was wrong. We were unsaved.
Another conversation.
Unmarried.
We'll get to that when we talk about.
And I remember Gil asking me. He said, "Do you wake up like this?"
Oh my gosh!
Every morning.
Yeah.
I was like,
and I didn't even drink coffee. And
he was like, I don't talk until afternoon.
Until I had my food. Or
he was
something
like,
I
gotta eat, because he used to always say,
get hangry.
Get hangry before we even knew
hungry,
what that
angry.
was.
Yeah.
And so that's just and so Gil didn't try to tell me, like, I get up in the morning, good morning, I'm singing, I'm cutting on the lights, I'm praising the Lord, and we're different. And I remember when Aaron was little.
Our daughter, yeah.
I remember because I would get her. I had to be at work at 5 a.m, and that was just the Lord protecting her from me, because Gil would get her up. And one morning I was at home, and I remember the Lord saying, I want you to listen to the two of them interact in the morning.
And it was probably just the facts, ma'am, just the necessity or
quiet.
silence.
It was quiet. And he said, see, you annoy her in the morning. Because she's more like her dad. She's not a morning. And then you have morning people.
Well, you
have afternoon people.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I was going back at it. I wasn't grumpy. I just
we're not cheerful.
I wasn't like you.
Yeah, and that's okay. And so there's so many differences in relationships.
But
there's so many uniquenesses.
But how did you make that adjustment, though? Or did you make an adjustment?
Oh, I had to.
Because my adjustment was, okay, my wife is super excited all the time. But I had to say, she's not like me. I wish she calmed down. I didn't say that. I didn't start enforcing those, and we talked about in our last episode, expectations. I didn't start enforcing those, my expectations on you to act like me.
Right. And I had to learn that you can't call people at 5 o'clock in the morning I'm on 20 all the time. And
boy,
so
you get hung up on.
I have had to learn, just like with you, I had to learn. I have to give him time when he comes home from work, and I have to give him
even
time
get up in the morning.
Before I just I'm screaming and hollering and like, good morning.
Well,
That's
you still
how
do
I
that.
feel.
You still do that.
I do, but just not when you first get. Now I get up with you, baby. What I do? I just give you a hug and I just say,
we just
hug each other, and that's what you do.
You throttled down and I throttled up.
Yes,
so to speak.
And so I think a part of it is that we all need a place where we have the freedom to be who we are, but where we are also open to the fact that maybe everything that we are is not everything.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to be open to that. And that's what relationships do. I believe that healthy relationships make you better than what you could ever be by yourself.
Right.
And that's what we need. That's what this is all about. It's about growing. It's about changing. And I hope that by us sharing our own weaknesses and strengths and
experiences,
and experiences, that it can kind of help someone to understand that we are all different. But then there's some things that we all need. We all need love. We all need security. We all need acceptance. We all need identity. But we're all going to need that and feel that different. Another area we do on our assessment is your communication type.
Your style.
How you communicate.
Yeah, and we get to the communication episode.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
Kind of share some of the different types of
communication styles
that you have.
So there's so many areas where we're different. Mm-hmm. And then there's so many areas where we're alike. But a part of it is understanding and accepting that and giving the other person the grace to be who they are, because you're going to need who they are.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm going to need who you are, and you're going to need who I am. And that's the beauty of relationships.
And if you embrace that, and I take that and say, the good things about you, as we say, your strengths are my weaknesses.
And my weaknesses are your strengths.
Those, and I exchange those things, and I say, well, this is where an area she's strong at. Just like you were talking about the technical aspects of doing the podcast and
The
and
sound quality. That's
I look
real.
at the design aspects and all the social media stuff like that. As an introvert, man, you can forget that social media stuff.
You know, we were in.
My philosophy is you'll find it.
It's like,
But I know
Lord
that's not
Jesus.
necessary.
And you know, like today, we were getting prepared for the show, and we were at Panera Bread, and I was just sitting there, and I saw this group of ladies who were sitting at the table, and it was just so beautiful to kind of. I wasn't like.
Oh, just saying you were eavesdropping.
I just noticed the.
Well,
first
some
of all,
people talk out loud. You can just can't help but
they were
overhear
having
it.
a conversation, and it was just so beautiful to see this group of women.
Okay.
Sorting life together.
Spoiler alert! Here comes an extroverted moment. Go ahead, tell them what you did.
So I walked over to them, and
oh my God, she actually walked up to them. Strangers, y'all.
I walked over to them, and I said, "I just want to say thank you." And they're like, "Thank you for what?" I said, "Thank you for being a great example of fostering and cultivating relationships." I said, "I didn't listen to everything you guys said, but I did hear some of the things you were talking about, and it's just so good to see people working on relationships." And they said, "We've been friends for 17 years, and thank you so much." And we told them about the podcast.
And you said you were going to give a shout out to the Panera Bread
So to
ladies.
the beautiful women from Panera Bread who've been friends for 17 years,
this is your shout out.
Thanks for being a display of rich relationships in your community. And we will be doing stuff like that because I love walking up to people and talking to them.
Well, you will be doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I love people, and so
But I actually did go up and introduce myself
because they said
because I didn't have a choice, y'all.
Because we had on our rich relationship shirts, and so they asked. They said, "Oh, you guys, is that your husband?" I said, "Yes, my husband." So he walked over and
introduced myself.
Yes, he did.
Like I didn't have a choice, y'all, but I did it.
But it was fun.
And that kind of leads into what we're talking about in this episode about personalities and differences in men and women in an hour later of the Rich Relationship Podcast. And that's a part of the outer life that we are talking about. How do you live your life outside of just even your relationship that you and I share? That's the judging versus the perceiving side that we kind of gave you those letters at the beginning of this, where judging, that I am very closed off. I think of rules and deadlines and limitations and not judging people. I prefer to have details. Or before I go up and meet a group of women at a restaurant, what information do I have about them? Let me get to know them. Or do I have a reason to go up to them?
It's good that you say that because it would be inappropriate for you to walk up to a group of women. Just like it would be inappropriate for me to walk up to a group of men.
Yeah.
Because those some of the boundaries we set in our relationship. I don't ride in a car with a man by myself because I'm married to my husband.
Right.
And Gil doesn't ride in a car with a woman by himself because he's...
Those are just rules that
that's
we
just
set
like a sidebar.
Yeah.
There's certain things that are inappropriate to do, certain safeguards and boundaries you have to set in your relationship.
So like that, in that aspect, that's where your personality type is. You're a perceiving person, and one of the descriptors of a perceiving person is you like to improvise and go with the flow of the situation. Just like in that, you know, you eavesdropping on a lady's conversation and you improvise. Well, I'm sorry, you were overhearing some of the things they were saying, but you still went up to them. You improvised and you went up to them and said and introduced yourself. That was the extrovert part of your personality. Introduce yourself to them and said, "Hey," and gave them a comment or some feedback or how you felt or what you thought about what they said, which was real interesting to me.
And you know what's funny when you say that? I think about even when I met your mom for the first time, when you say I don't pay attention to the details. I remember when I met your mom and I went up to her and I was like, "Hi, how are you? Could you tell me what kind of cake Gil likes?" And she's looking at me. She's like,
how about cake, you introduce yourself
yellow
first?
Cake with yellow cake
she just
with
answered
chocolate
your
icing.
question, right?
And I said, "Okay, thank you."
And just walk off.
And I just walk off. And then Gil, he called me. He said, well, actually, that was before cell phones. When I got home, you called me. He said, I said, "Guess what? I met your mom."
No, you didn't meet my mom.
And you said, "Did you tell her your name?" I said, "Oh." I said, "No." And so I'm like, I'm going to be the dumb girl.
Was that the extrovert part of you or the feeling part of you?
No, that was the extrovert part of me that does not pay attention to details.
Right. Okay.
And so I think about that. I love people. I care about them. But when it comes to all the little bitty details, that kind of escapes me. And so that's something that I realized, even with doing the show, doing Atlanta Live, I love Atlanta Live. I love the show. I love the people. I love the opportunity. I feel more equipped to help people on a podcast than I do on television. And I have so many people that are in the media that I love and I admire. It's no joke, y'all.
Oh, it's not as easy as
hard work. Because you still have to, for me, if I have to choose loving on people or getting all the details together, I'm going to always choose people over policies and procedures. Sure. And that's just the way I am. So to me, making the guests feel heard and accepted and loved is more important to me than how I look.
Right.
And how I sound. It's just, did I make sure that I, get everything? Did they get to share their story? Did what they mean really come across? And so to me, I think that your personality, your uniqueness is something you need to understand and embrace and not try to change it. Because I tried to get Gil to go on the show with me. I was like, babe, guess what? They want you to come on the show with me.
Uh-oh.
He was like,
no.
I ain't ready for that yet. And I was like.
And notice I said yet. And that was one of those assessment things where I had to think about it. I had to process some stuff.
But you did that quick, though.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
I did
it quick. He was like, no, I'm not ready for that.
Well, because I kind of felt the disturbance in the force where I knew that was coming.
It's coming.
Get
ready, babe.
Because of the feedback we've been getting from the show. And I know I don't have a problem with talking to people, but to go from a podcast to live television is a big jump for me.
You know what I realized? I didn't realize that writing, television, radio, podcasts, all different.
Mm-hmm. But
they're all different.
But that's a part of your extroverted personality. That's what we kind of tying this in back to, just to give you some real life examples of how your personality can play and spill over into your. Well, it doesn't spill over. It is a part of your life.
It's a part of your life. It affects everything.
And as long as you embrace those things, it's going to benefit you. Yes. Don't try to change. Don't try to change somebody else.
Try to understand it.
And use it to an advantage for your relationship.
Yeah, and I always say use your powers for good and not for evil. Just like
because we all superheroes. You got a superpower.
Right. We all got a superpower, and so we have to understand that. Just like Gil said, he knows that he processes and overthinks, and so therefore he's learning to not do that. And like for me, I know I could be impulsive. I don't pay attention to details, so I'm trying to learn how to do that. Because just like Gil has notes, I have notes.
Right.
And I'm learning that because that's important. We need to be able to do that.
But your detail shows on the website. And speaking of the website, you can find all the information about the show and some of the past episodes. You can reach it on the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is www.richrelationshipsus.com. And you can find a lot of details and information about the show and all the episodes that we've already posted. And we can also get your feedback.
Yeah,
there's
and
a tab there for the
social media.
contact us.
We have Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and Pinterest and Tumblr and every platform so that we can meet you where you are.
Right. Just Google it, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. Yes. And it should pop up because we've been kind of checking it out and seeing just to make sure we're reachable.
Yes, that you know where we are. You
right.
can find us.
Just so you can find it, listen to the show, and join the community and help all of us get stronger together so we all can grow. So on this relationship of the Rich Relationship Podcast, this episode we're talking about now and later, the uniqueness in men and women. Rich Relationships Podcast with Gil and Renee. This has been very interesting. We kind of talked about some things when it comes to now and later's the uniqueness in men and women. And we talked about the personality types, the Myers and Briggs personality assessment that we are aware of and familiar with, that we used as a starting point to kind of help you identify some of the things about your own personality. We encourage you all you got to do is Google it. Myers-Briggs personality assessment is 16 different personalities, and at least it gives you some places to start. And when you read those descriptions, you're going to be like, whoa.
That's me.
That's me. And it's very insightful, very interesing, very good.
And there's lots of newer ones that have come out. And that
the disc
that you can use.
Sure.
And then there's this a new one that's like a Enneagram. I can't pronounce it, but there's lots of things out there to kind of help you to get aware of who you are. When we get to the communication part, we're going to do your communication style. That's one of the assessments. So the podcast is great, but then there's also ways for us to help you personally one-on-one and group sessions. So please continue to just be a part of this community so we can grow and we can learn and we can get better so that we change.
Right. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and we'll look forward to you guys in the next episode. Gil and Renee Beaver's over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. If you found this podcast helpful or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.